All right, here we are with the first two baits again. We're gonna do the first two baits on that pre-spawn period for lakes in the middle of the country. We'll just call that middle of the country lakes. And to me, this one is pretty easy. I've got a theory. Most lakes are not gonna be all dirty. Most lakes are not gonna be all clean. So I'm gonna make that assumption for what we're going for here. The lakes that we're talking about here are the lakes that have some sections of some stained water, maybe not muddy, but stained water, and then some sections of clear water. That is going to be what most lakes are. And that pre-spawn period, the fish that I really enjoy targeting first are the ones that are in that intermediate stained type water. And the two baits I've got here, I'm almost cheating, I have three, but the two baits, one is a shallow running crankbait. This is probably my number one. And I've got, these are Little Johns. One's the original Little John with the computer chip bill. The other one is the MD. These are the two colors that I'm gonna fish. I'll show you the deal with these, ladies and gentlemen. But this is the original Little John. This bait runs about, it's a flat-sided crankbait. Yeah, flat-sided crankbait. This is spring crawl. If there's a little heavier stain, the definition of a little heavier stain is going to be that watercolor between, I would say, 6 inches and 2 feet. 6 inches and 1.5 feet, something like that. That stained watercolor is really where this bait shines. A little bit, even in the clearer water, you got some lower light conditions. That color right there in that pre-spawn period is really good. Now, a lot of your reds are excellent as well, but that spring crawl, I've caught so many fish on that color. It is crazy. I'm throwing that on probably 12-pound fluorocarbon. Yeah, Sunline Crank FC is my deal. Cash-in square bill rod for that thing. Like I said, 12-pound test, you can get that down to about 5 feet deep, maybe even 6 on a long cast. But that thing, it'll eat up anywhere from 2 to 5 feet of water, just banging that thing off any hard cover that you can find in that stained water, covering water. That is really good. But if the water's a tick clearer, that green pumpkin crawl is just straight, it's just called green pumpkin. It's just in the MD, runs a little bit deeper. That is just a really good bait for me. If you're throwing it into brush piles, into laydowns, into that cover that's around, that is another really good way I like to throw. And that's the MD. It's a little bit deeper version. That water's a little bit clearer. We're talking like 1 to 3 feet of visibility. Maybe if it gets a little bit sunny, that color right there is just bad to the bone in that MD. So that's one. I'm grouping those as one bait in your first two. So the other bait is a jig. You thought I froze up there for a second. It is a jig. It's the Missile Baits mini flip jig. I absolutely love this bait in the pre-spawn time period. I have caught so many fish. It's ridiculous. I go back and forth between the bruiser, black and blue, and then the Bammer Crawl. Those are really the only two colors that I throw in that pre-spawn period. And that jig works anytime that it is 6 inches of visibility all the way up to 4 and 5 feet of visibility. I mean, even in the pretty darn clear water, that jig will absolutely catch them. I got the Missile Baits Mini D chunk on the back, and it is in the matching Bammer Crawl color here. If I'm throwing it on the bruiser, probably either in that pre-spawn period, I may go with the flipping blue, like the straight blue, or probably the Superbug. Those are kind of my two go-tos on the trailers for the black and blue. But this one, I will give you one huge tip. But first of all, I'm gonna throw this almost exclusively on 20-pound Sunline Shooter, 7.6 medium heavy cash and flipping stick, high speed Daiwa reel. And one big tip is that don't get hung up on throwing only one weight. You might want to alternate between 2 different weights. That can be a big difference. This is the 1/2 ounce version. I'm going to almost always have a 1/2 ounce and a 3/8 ounce size when I'm fishing in that pre-spawn time period with a mini flip jig. I have seen it. I have definitely seen it. They want that slower fall at times of that 3/8 ounce. You're fishing, you know, let's say 0 to 6 feet, 8 feet even. Sometimes that 3/8 can be, it's just a little more subtle. The skirt's going to stay a little more flared on the fall. It's not going to, and it's not falling as fast. You can still drag it in 6, 8, 9 feet of water. You can still drag it on the bottom, that 3/8, if you don't work it too fast. Occasionally on that 3/8, I'll lighten up my line. I might go to 18 or even 16 on that sunline shooter, but usually I'll stay in that 18 or 20. But if I'm fishing a little deeper than that, if I'm fishing, you know, 8, 10, 12 feet of water, I'm gonna probably go to the 1/2 ounce just so I can maintain a little contact and keep my bait down there in the strike zone a little bit better. I mean, I've seen it. Like I said, I've seen it multiple times. The size can be a big deal, and it's just the rate of fall. That is the biggest difference. Make sure this something about that orange. If you notice the pattern here, orange, red, there's a little pattern there, on that pre-spawn time period that it absolutely gets bit. I'll tell you one other tip for the jig is that there are times when you want to throw that bait out there and actually just drag it in. I'm talking, you're skipping it under docks. Throw that thing out there, drag it in. There's times they want it drugged like that. There's times when they want it hopped. So you might throw it in there, drag it a little bit, hop it a little bit, just give it a couple little hops where it'll jump, you know, 6 inches to a foot off the bottom, come back down. That can be a trigger for them sometimes, but then there's a lot of times when they want it. So alternate your retrieves. Don't get hung up on just hopping it or just dragging it till you find out really what they want for that day or that time of day even. That's another little jig tip for you. But those are definitely my first 2 baits for that pre-spawn time period. Flat-sided crankbait, like a Little John, jig, like a mini flip. Put them 2 on, you'll be just all right in that pre-spawn time period.